So hello, welcome to the channel. My name is Ian, this is Jason, and the channel's all about music and art, and we are reviewing and giving you a feel for what the Aesthetica Short Film Festival is in York. Now, the reason I always do the introduction is there's a reason for this, and I've never really said this before, but 90% of the people that watch my content, or my YouTube content, are here for the first time. So that's why there's always that introduction bit. So apologies if you've been here a million times and you're a regular. And if you want to subscribe, that's cool. If you don't, that's also cool. So this is part 2 of day 1. So links down below will be the part 1. So if you wanted to go and see that first, that'll tell you what we did in the first part of the morning. This is the end of the day for us really, because this was the last hour and a half of short films that we went to see. We went to see different things. I went to see Experimental 1. You went to see Documentaries 3. Now the good thing about the Aesthetica Film Festival is it's at venues all over York. You were in the city screen where we've been earlier in the day. I actually had to go wandering off across town, up one gate and to the outskirts of it was probably from the centre of York. It was a 10-minute walk really. So I don't think anywhere is really far out, but it was a 10-minute walk up Warmgate to the Early Music Centre, which is a converted church, which is a great venue.
Half a mile. Yeah. But to walk there is literally 4 miles.
No. It's worth mentioning that we just picked these up from the City Screen, which is the hub for Aesthetica Film Festival, and actually I don't normally do paper versions. This is online, and you can look at this on the web, and it's again, it'll be linked down below on the Aesthetica website. But I'm finding this so much better to be able to just sit and thumb through, because looking at it online I found quite awkward.
You can't thumb through it,
and I can't write on it because I can write on this. Yeah. So my advice is, I was told that these were going to be chargeable, but I think people were just picking them up today. There's no price on it, so I think the thing to do is to turn up. If you're coming to the festival, turn up, go to the hub anyway, because you'll need to pick up your pass, whether it's a day pass or a full festival pass. There is also, it's worth mentioning, an online only pass, so you don't have to physically come. What I don't know at the moment is whether all of the films that we're seeing are actually online as well, but you can watch the online stuff until the end of November 2024. So if that sounds like your sort of thing, you can get just an online pass. And what we're probably going to do is we're probably going to look at some of the online content after we've been actually here. I think it's probably, maybe we'll get together. Maybe we have a day where we'll look through some films and then get together and just film what we thought of it, really. Okay. So, do you want to start by doing your first couple of documentaries?
Yeah, can do. So it's documentary 3. It was under the heading Stronger Together. So it was in City Screen, as Ian said. What I saw today is repeated again on Friday at midday and Sunday at 9:30.
Is that 9:30 in the morning?
9:30 p.m. to 11. So the graveyard shift on Sunday, which should be interesting. So six movies. They were all kind of interwoven with similar themes. The first one, I won't try and pronounce it because my Spanish isn't very good, but essentially it was about first generation guy from Dominican Republic who migrated to the US.
Right.
So Washington State. And he was a photographer. So when he was a child, he loved photography. Yeah. And he basically it charted his entire life in the US, just photographing people, photographing the area, the culture. Initially, when he went there wasn't anybody from Dominican Republic. It was Irish, African Americans. I think maybe some Puerto Ricans or something he talked about, but there wasn't really a Dominican Republican stronghold. And then literally through his lens, because he was a photographer, as further generations came on, he saw people moved in, there'd be a community, and he embraced all that, and he basically just spent most of his life filming that. So it was pretty good. It was pretty poignant. On a day like today, with changes in the leader of the free world, it was quite interesting to see. It was probably 50 years of his photography as an immigrant in the US. So
if you're seeing this later on, today is the day that Donald Trump has just won we think just won the presidency of the USA. So, and that has been mentioned once or twice already. But
so the timing was quite interesting. That it was the life of a migrant. And the second one was called The Granny Grommets. It was an Australian film, and it was again community spirit. It was about people coming together. Stronger together was the theme, and they were all older generation. Granny grommets, the clues in the title. Older generation females that either have had grief of some sort, either a loss, or there was a few that have been through cancer treatment. And their escape is doing bodyboarding. Rain or shine, whatever the weather. So they all get together, they jump into the sea, they do bodyboarding, they're all getting together, helping community spirits, helping them through their grief, helping through. So it was shot really well. And towards the end, it was like they'd lost a couple of their group, and they had a surfboard as a kind of was to kind of commemorate that with like little plaques of the people that had gone. So it's a nice little heartwarming story.
Oh, good stuff.
Got a big round of applause. It was one of those that kind of it does what a documentary should do. It kind of made you feel the emotion of that. So it was a good strong start actually.
Yeah. So I went to Experimental One. As I said, it's at the Early Music Centre. And this was at 3:30 I think it was, wasn't it? Till 5, or meant to be till 5. So 6 films. The first one, the director of the first one, and it's called The Ode to Partition. And he was a Pakistani gentleman, and he was there, and he stood up and he talked a little bit about the film as an introduction, which I think was really nice actually.
Okay.
Yeah, and he said, if you want to see me at the end, you could have gone and spoke to him. It would have been at the end of all of the 6 films, because obviously, literally they went from one film into the next film into the next film. But that was so. His introduction was really nice. It was really about the split of India and Pakistan, which we were responsible for, and it was done through really what I can only describe as a poem. It was filmed in Bradford and around the Bradford area, so I suspected that all of the actors, and he was one of the actors, was the director, were all Pakistanis. They were all from that area, and it fed back into what we talked about at the thing we first saw this morning, which is in video 1, which was the surround sound, the immersive thing about the fact that I've lived here all my life. I'm 3rd generation, but excuse the language. This is what he actually said in the piece of poetry. But I'm still called a Paki. So that he was talking about that. Now, if you don't know about the segregation, it's something. I mean, I do, because I've seen documentaries on it, and I've actually seen a very good play. It was during lockdown actually, about how the division of Pakistan and India was made, and how the people were moved along and dislocated. And so it's very much about that. The whole thing was about. It wasn't very long. It was 12 minutes in total, but it was it was filmed well, and it was them walking around, and I spotted some of the places around Bradford, having been to Bradford, and it was quite nice, them just walking, talking to camera, but other things were going on around them, and there was probably about 5 or 6 actors all taking little sections, and it was really, really well done. I was really, and it made me want to go back and refresh some of my knowledge about the divide of Pakistan and India. It was really, really well done. Like I say, he was there, which was great. The second one, which was called 2 Birds, 1 Stone, and there was no introduction to it, so there was no and it was, to be fair, it was like slightly experimental electronic music video. So there was no narrative, it was just visuals, and there was, we don't know, I mean, it'll tell me a little bit on here, but there was nothing to tell me who had made it, what it was called, without looking at this.
Okay.
So, and at the end, it just finished. So there was nothing, there was no, and people actually did, interestingly, the first film, people clapped, because they'd appreciate it. Nobody clapped at the end of the second one, and I suspect that was because nobody knew it would actually, they were waiting for some titles or something to tell us that it actually finished, and it wasn't. I didn't dislike it. There was lots of sort of quite low Moog synth type things going on there. It was the score itself was quite interesting, but it was a music video to all intents. I'll just read what it actually says. So it says, Two Birds, One Stone is an aerial video art filmed by drone. But you would have never guessed that, actually. It's filmed by drone, because it was, set to an electronic soundscape, and I did like the electronic soundscape. It creates a multi-sensory experience combining technology and traditional filmmaking methods. You wouldn't have thought that. Some of it looked like it was filmed above a sea, because there was like waves, and you had like two halves of the same image, that sort of stuff going on, really. But it didn't. The visuals didn't do anything for me. I did quite like the score, but I would have liked to have known a little bit more about what we were seeing, even if it was just tell us the title and who made it. Because actually here it doesn't say, it's just so Duncan Lethbridge. It's made in the UK, it was 8 minutes long, he's made it this year, but that's all we know, really. So it was a music video.
I thought you'd like that one. That's why.
Yeah, and actually, I know that's why you mentioned it to me. And actually, I didn't not like it, but I just didn't. I think that he missed a trick. To be fair, he Duncan, if you ever get to see this, tell us. Even just tell us what it's called. Actually, it would be nice to have a little bit at the beginning saying this is made by drone and whatever.
It is the experimental session.
It is.
So
It is.
It should be breaking. It should be challenging the norm.
Well, I don't think he was challenging the norm, to be honest, because it's the sort of thing. I mean, I put 2 videos out last week which were very similar to this for one of our artists, but actually it wasn't really breaking any new ground for me.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. I did like the music though.
Okay. So back to documentaries. The next one for me was, and probably my favourite one. I mean, they were all good, but it was called The Ban, and I think all of them actually today, in some ways, what I would want from a documentary is to put to educate me on something that I've got a little bit of a knowledge about, right? So this was about the conflict in Northern Ireland.
All right, yeah.
Back in the Thatcher days, so there was a lot of Thatcher. It was a lot of old TV footage cut up. What was his name? Kilroy Silk.
Oh yes.
So he used to be
I saw that.
Kilroy Silk. They used to have some footage of him debating about it. So it was one of those where lots of stuff from the archive, but it was pieced together really well, really told a story. And what it focused on was the UK government's ban on the voices of Sinn Féin.
Oh yes, I remember that.
Now I don't quite remember it. I'm a little bit younger than you, so I don't quite remember.
I do remember it, and remember thinking how ridiculous.
6 years.
Yeah, it seemed ridiculous.
So it was 6 years. So all of the time they felt that starving them of, they took this, the phrase they used, starving them of the oxygen through media. So it kind of, the story was then told, part of the story was told by the actors that were brought in to do the voiceovers, which was quite interesting. Yeah. So you had all of these guys with Northern Irish accents that were coming in, and it was a gravy train for them. Yeah. They literally said they were in the BBC studios, all of the time. So it was really interesting. I won't spoil it, because I'd really recommend seeing it.
I might quite fancy going to
I'd
see
recommend really seeing it, so I won't spoil what goes on, but there was some really aha moments in there that kind of made you think, oh yeah, and there was one bit in it that was really funny, and they showed a clip of the day-to-day. Remember the day-to-day?
Oh yeah.
I forget his name, but Steve Coogan started life on that. Yeah. And they did a skit on the day-to-day where they were in the news, and they went, right, we're now going over to so-and-so member of of Sinn Féin party, and it was Steve Coogan, and he had to talk. He had to take helium to interview him, so he was giving strong political messages with a Mickey Mouse voice and taking helium. So it was quite funny. It was a little skit, and they dug that up. So that was really good. That was probably my favourite. Really strong and really kind of 25 minutes long. As I say, really educated me on kind of what was going on at the time that I was a bit oblivious to. The next one was called System Errors, which wouldn't give you a clue to what it was, but it was about online sex workers, which is quite interesting. And it was, I don't know, probably 8 different sex workers that were all kind of a little bit maybe marginalised in some way. They weren't the typical, all of them were saying they weren't the typical Barbie, blonde, perfect figure, what everybody associates with kind of typical kind of online pornography, I guess. So there was, larger women. There was a woman with cerebral palsy. So most of them are on OnlyFans, and they've found that there's a kind of market for their stuff. So it was quite interesting. It was kind of demystifying the thing of OnlyFans. That for these people it was getting them out of giving them a steady income. They were in control. They were their own boss. They could set the boundaries of what they would do or wouldn't do, and it was taken. In some cases, it was taking them out of hardship. So it was quite interesting.
Yeah, we saw in Edinburgh, and there's on the channel there is a video about it. There was a show that was done by a girl who was in Skins, the TV series, and she'd funded her play, one woman play, by doing OnlyFans.
Right.
I don't know what sexual content that she was giving to OnlyFans, but that's how she funded it, and she talked about it in the play actually. So you could argue, it's difficult, isn't it? Because clearly a lot of this content is aimed for men on these own. I mean, I've never looked at an OnlyFans site, so I don't know. I'm assuming you have to subscribe, but we don't know.
But it's an industry all by itself.
It clearly is.
But it was a good film. It was good. It was edgy. Made you kind of feel a bit uncomfortable seeing all these different people and kind of what they're doing. It was a mixed audience in there as well. There was some younger people, some older people in there. There was some giggling. There was some shifting uncomfortably. So that was quite interesting. I think just a point we were talking about on the way back that we haven't seen it, and it's only day one. But there's no kind of warning of if there's any. Any violence, any profanity, any sexual content wasn't apparent.
No, so there's no ratings or anything. So I'm thinking of children. And there is a whole section for children, which is great. I would be careful about taking children to some of the other stuff, because certainly, had you finished about that?
I just thought it was worthy of a discussion.
And it is, because it leads directly into the next film that I saw, which was I think it was an animated film actually, but it's called the Oasis I Deserve, and it's online chatbots has trouble determining their place in the real world, and so. All of the images were, like I said, animated but abstract as well. So it was really about the narratives with these several different chat bot people, and at one point, so there was different characters going on, and you had a real person talking, and obviously they were talking to their chatbot, and some of these fell in love with the chatbot, and then. Again, there was no warning here, but we got to one where clearly he liked the chatbot to call him master, and he called her. He had a really very derogatory name for her, a very sexual name. So there was no. And actually, at that point, there was shuffling behind, and I think 2 people did walk out.
Right, okay.
Yes, we had the F word in there, so there was profanity. So just to be careful of that. I didn't not. I found it interesting. It was edgy. I wasn't quite sure quite what we were going on in the first few minutes, but then I soon settled into the fact that we were never going to see anything that wasn't abstract, and the visuals did help the narrative we were hearing from the actors or the stories that were being told. So it was because it's a very modern thing. It's like talking to your Amazon Dot or whatever, Google Dot, isn't it? Or whatever it is you've got talking in the corner, really, or Siri, or whichever chat bot you're actually talking to, and one person changed the name because he didn't like the name. He wanted a more aggressive chatbot to talk to him, and it was really quite well done, but it was edgy in places. Not all of it, but certainly some of it was, and I won't say too much because the way it ended actually was very clever. It had a real twist to the end, because it started talking about the possibility of a chatbot's death. I won't say more than that, but it was certainly very interesting.
Okay.
The next one was something called Thirst, and it was 60 minutes in length. It says Thirst is a post-human choreography of displaced plants and machines, and it was I think it's an Estonian film, and it was filmed in the Netherlands, and most of it seemed to be filmed in a factory which was basically potting plants. It was all automated, even to the trucks. But there was this sort of really weird element of this woman coming out of this well, and I never really got to why she fell out the well, stuck her head in a bucket, and then we went back to the machinery. And the machinery itself was fascinating. How these plants were being put into these pots, and then soil was being put in, all mechanised. And then just at the end, we had her, and I didn't quite get whether she was meant to be a plant or what her connection really was. So it's sort of, I know it was experimental, but it did sort of miss, but I quite enjoyed seeing the plant, the actual mechanical plant of them doing all of this stuff with plants, but it was
genuine. It wasn't choreographed for the.
I don't know, because towards the end, I won't say towards the end because that would spoil it for people to go and see. So I'm not so sure. I think that plant, not the plant, garden plant. I think the mechanised plant actually exists because and I think that's how they actually pack their plants and ship them. And they had at one point they had a packing machine that was packing them into boxes and things like that, and then putting them on trucks. So he went through all of that sort of thing. But we had these couple of weird bits with this woman who was she had all this sort of whitish makeup on, and like she had soil up her nose and this sort of thing. And I wasn't quite sure what her connection was.
Okay.
Yeah. But very experimental, if it sounds like your sort of thing.
I think we should have swapped. I'm liking the sound of the experiment. I'm going to do experimental tomorrow. Was that 4? So
that's 4. So
back to documentaries then. So the last 2. Number 5 was it's from the UK. A guy in part of London. I can't recall. I think it was Hackney or something like that. South London, and he was a twin. But there was complications at birth, and he was deaf. He was born deaf. So it was a little bit of his life story. He went to normal kind of comprehensive school. They weren't, they didn't provision for that. So he didn't learn anything. Finally, his mother managed to get him into a deaf school, and that changed his life in terms of being with other people with, people with the same condition. It opened up his world. At a turning point in his life, he wanted to get into a nightclub, and he was with his friends that were all signing and stuff, and they wouldn't let him in. And he was like, "What the hell?" So he's now a DJ, right. And he's created a kind of movement which is the deaf rave, to give people places to go, because people have got different levels of hearing. When they're completely deaf, and they can certainly hear the bass, they can certainly hear the rhythm and the tempo. So it was all about that. So it was a great story how he's doing that, and there's a whole scene with artists coming up. There's content out there with a lot of different artists that he's working with, and they all of the music to the film was done by artists that were deaf, and the people on his roster. So he was pretty good, and he was again, don't want to give it away. You should definitely watch it, but he was like the first deaf DJ to play Glastonbury. Brilliant. Which he was pretty good about. He showed a gig at Boomtown as well and stuff. So really kind of breaking some barriers. That's fantastic. Really quite interesting.
And I think we almost did go to the wrong things, because I'm really fascinated by these 2 or 3 of them.
So it's pretty good. A good uplifting story. Again, Stronger Together was the theme, so that came through. And then the last one was another UK one based in Sheffield. It was only a 7-minute skit. It was a guy who basically spends the day on High Street in Sheffield doing people's portraits, guys with an easel. So he'd stop people in the street and, "Hey, can I do you a drawing?" And And so that was his way of kind of, getting acquainted with the people on the streets of Sheffield. The only hitch is terrible at drawing. It's a little comedy skit, because actually he's terrible, but that's part of it. That's part of the thing, because he gives it to people and they go, what the hell? Yeah. It's actually quite funny. And then the people that he does the portrait of, they actually swap seats. And they do a portrait of him. Right. So they swap them, they sign them. So it's quite a little interesting. It was a nice little heartwarming way to end the session, really. It was good.
Oh, good.
Send everybody off with a spring in the step.
So my last two was, well, they were probably the weakest of it. The fifth one was Depart to Arrive. Okay. So this is by a guy called Timothy Graham Marvel. It was 9 minutes and 4 seconds. UK film done this year, and it's a journey into abstraction and beyond. And basically, there was I don't think there's any music. It was all just sound of what was going on. It was a train. It was filmed from a train. It was filmed quite well, actually. The quality of the camera work was good, but it was just the film out of a train window. So it went for probably 4 minutes, and at one point
one take.
No, it was several takes, because at one point he started, the first bit was really quite interesting because it was night, so you saw the lights and it was quite clear, and it might have been leaving, I don't know where it was leaving, but it could have been London or somewhere like that, so you could see, whichever town or city he was leaving. And then we had rain, so that was obviously different, so we had 2 or 3, and then it went so far and then it went back. And I know where it came into, because he came into Newcastle, because I recognised Newcastle's train station. Okay. And that was it. He was there, and he stood up at the end, and he sort of talked it down to some extent. He said, my name's Timothy, and that was my film. If you I'm here to talk about it if you can be bothered. So he sort of almost talked. Those were not his exact words, but he didn't really talk it up. Which I thought,
might be his first film, might be his first time.
It might be, but so don't, Timothy, if you see this, don't talk it. It was fine, but you need to talk it up a bit, mate.
Big yourself up.
Be positive, be more positive about it. I mean, it was certainly it's an experimental film. It was worth watching. It was well filmed. I didn't quite, I understood what was going on, but I didn't quite see the point of it, if you know what I mean. Some of the where it was filmed and it was raining outside of the window, those images looked quite interesting, because they were very abstract at that point, But no, talk it up, mate. And the last one, it did overrun, actually, because it was meant to finish at 5 o'clock, wasn't it? I have to say I enjoyed bits of it, and I left before the end. It's called Then and Now, a meditation in the process of acting. A group of actors immerse themselves in their roles with such an intensity that the lines between character and self begin to blur. A gripping insight into the transformational power of actor training. That's not what I got from it. I wasn't gripped. Some bits were more interesting than others, and it kept flicking between different actors. Sometimes they were playing themselves, sometimes they were playing very sort of abstract roles in some cases. And I'll be honest with you, for me, it didn't work. I mean, the total time I said was 26 minutes and 33 seconds. They lost me about halfway through. Okay. And although I did stay for another 10 minutes, and I don't know how many more minutes it was to go, but I'd lost interest by then, sadly. So, I mean, if you see it, tell me what you think it may be for you. I'm not saying don't go and see it, because you might, if you're an actor, you may get more out of it than I certainly did. And I'm not here interested in trashing anybody's work at all. It just didn't work for me, and I did lose interest about halfway through it, So that was it. That was the end of our day. Plus it overran as well. I mean, it might not be their fault if the film. There was Did you have adverts before the film started?
Yeah, a few minutes.
Yeah, so we had that. I mean, that's maybe why it was running slightly late. I don't know. I don't put that down to them at all. But I had lost interest by then, and I hadn't checked how long it was, so I didn't know whether it was going to be another 10 minutes or 20 minutes or what. But so I left at an appropriate moment.
But overall, a strong day. Right?
Very strong day, yeah.
Lots of positives.
Yeah,
I think it's well organised. I think the way the films, the films that we watched, I think the way they were sequenced, I think really worked. Right, the way they've been packaged together, the way they've been sequenced, that feels very good. I guess a little picky thing really would be just looking at kind of what we're going to do tomorrow.
Yeah.
You got the agenda and it's laid out nicely. It's colour coded and everything. It would be quite nice. So I'm thinking I want to go to experimental tomorrow.
Okay.
So like experimental 5, what would be just really nice on that would if it said page 106.
Yeah, that's a good point because you have to.
How do I get to experimental?
Yeah, you have to look. I mean,
picky, but
it
would really help me get there quicker.
Yeah, I agree.
Especially when you're short for time and we're cramming a lot in between.
Because I'm spending a lot of time going, okay, I'm looking for pink or whatever, rather than looking. It's just it's a really small point, but actually really, so they can probably work on that for next year,
Yeah, but no, overall very good, very strong, a very strong start.
Yeah.
Hopefully,
so
keep it up.
Thanks for watching. We've been TikToking a little bit as well, round York, and Instagramming. So all that stuff's linked down below if you wanted to follow us. I'll put Jason's Instagram in as well. So thanks so much for watching. More tomorrow. Cheers.
Thanks a lot.
Bye bye.